I have to tell you, folks, I know that 1 week ago today on this show, I told you that Trump was going to win by a landslide. I know I said that. And you know what? I stand by it. I stand by that what the actual vote count made by legal voters who voted in the time frame permitted by the laws in their state that are actually not fraudulent votes, the count of legal votes, I still stand by my prediction, Trump won in a landslide. It does not mean that he had to win 90% of the vote. It means the idea that President Trump won more than the needed number of votes for the Electoral College, despite what the media is going to tell you, and despite what we're going to talk about today. I will tell you that in the as a contrast between where we were in other election cycles, back in 2008, when the Republican Party nominated John McCain, I said on the day he was nominated, as it became obvious he was going to be the candidate, I told anyone who asked me, there is no chance on the planet Earth that John McCain will beat Barack Obama. Not one chance. I still supported his campaign because he won the primary. I still voted for him. But I didn't have a sour grapes feeling when the election happened, because I think everyone sentient could see that John McCain was not popular, even with Republicans. He basically got nominated out of it. It's his turn. He's been there long enough, kind of begrudging letting him get next in line to be the candidate. He did not engage, inspire anybody, and everyone could see how Barack Obama had galvanized the Democrat voting base. So I didn't have sour grapes after 2008. Even in 2012, when Mitt Romney ran against Barack Obama, who was seeking his second term, I did think that perhaps Mitt Romney had a better chance than John McCain, because America had gotten a chance of 4 years under Barack Obama, and conservatives would realize, many Republicans even who might have voted for Barack Obama the first time around out of some idea that'd be great to have the first black president, soon realized the guy's a radical leftist. So I thought maybe that Romney would beat President Obama. And he did not. Now, that is an election where we could go off on the evidence, even at that time, about what kind of skullduggery occurred with respect to the manipulation of votes inside electronic voting machines. There was evidence at the time this was possible, a demonstration done to show people how it was done, how it could be done. But I did not have sour grapes. It wasn't sour grapes, the reaction to what was happening at the end of the 2012 elections. But this time, my insistence, my fire, my passion for the idea that Trump must fight to defeat the fraud in this election, in this 2020 election cycle, that Trump must fight, the American people must fight, the people who back President Trump must fight, is not sour grapes either. It is outrage at the idea that when you look at all of the obvious indicia of voter fraud, very suspicious conduct, violation of law, the whole series of things we're going to lay out today, that at least at this point, less than a week after the election of 2020, after November 3rd, everyone who cares about the future of America better be in the fight to stand up, at least at the very least, to expose the illegality, the fraud, the wrongdoing that seems to most obviously have occurred in this 2020 election cycle. And we must push every single legitimate argument to its extreme, to go to court over it, to fight for it. Because as we'll lay out for today, what I'm going to try to do today in the show today, I'm going to try to lay out the examples of skullduggery, what actually happened, we already know happened, what is extremely suspicious and seems to have happened. And then we're going to talk about the Constitution's remedies to deal with where we are, because election day is over. What are our remedies available? And finally, I want to have a very solid, rock solid reminder to you in the last segment about what America under Biden would look like. And the reason I want to talk about that ties back to the beginning of the show right now. I want you to leave this show so inspired to do everything you can think of legally to get behind the idea of insisting that America deserves an honest election, deserves to have an examination of all of the potential wrongdoing that seems to have been uncovered in this election cycle. I'm going to ask Matt the Wonderful. First of all, I have a word to show you. I used to do a word. Every show I did, I had a word of the week, a word of the day. I'll show you this fun word. This is what we're doing today. This is a new vocabulary word for everybody. It's psephology, the study of elections. Psephology is actually a word. That's what we're doing today, psephology. That's it. And also Matt the Wonderful. In this first 5, I want to ask you to play a clip. This is a clip by a lawyer who's gotten involved. At the moment, he's down, I think, in Georgia. His name is Lynn Wood. His last name is Wood. And he has gotten involved in the Georgia election at the behest of President Trump to try to press through to the honest conclusion of what happened in Georgia on election night. Matt the Wonderful, let's hear from Lynn Wood.
I was sitting around Tuesday night watching the election returns. I've loved politics all my life, since I first voted in 1972. And I saw what I assumed was going to happen. I saw President Trump building up what I believed was going to be almost a historic landslide victory.
It was.
And then all of a sudden, every network, including Fox News, started doing what they do best. They started lying to the American public. And they took a victory from Donald Trump and they called it a lie. They took a defeat from Joe Biden and lied and said he won. And they sent you to bed, turning off the count of the vote, so you could wake up the next morning like I did and go, what happened? Because there is a cloud over this country. And if we don't get it right and we don't figure out what happened that night, that cloud is going to get darker and darker until it turns into a storm cloud and we're going to lose our freedom. So it is time to fight back. I've heard over the past several months, maybe a little bit longer, they've almost neutered the word. Well, it's a constitutional crisis. This is a constitutional crisis. Let me tell you, this is a constitutional crisis. And if we don't fix it and find out what happened and get it right, we're going to lose our constitutional rights. When they take away your First Amendment, they're going to come after your Second Amendment. And then they're going to take away your due process. And then they're going to put you in jail because you're a dissenting voice to the ruling elite, and you're not even going to jury trial. They're going to take away your constitutional rights. This is a constitutional crisis.
That, my friends, is a guy on fire. And he kind of summarized the many things we want to talk about today. But in this first 5, I just want to hit a few points. Obviously, you're all watching as the media is attempting to coronate, just crown as king, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And she obviously really would be the only one who's actually running the country, because Joe Biden will be in the basement of the White House, and he'll probably think he's in the basement at home someplace, not running the country. And Kamala Harris, a radical Marxist, will be in charge of this country. This is why so many people are concerned. I will say this, I'm not being this is not hyperbole or exaggeration. Where America stands right now, we have one path ahead of us, that we are literally on the doorstep of becoming Venezuela. What that guy was listing, what you heard that lawyer talk about, this is the Marxist leftist agenda, that whether Biden stays as a figurehead or not, or Kamala Harris, if the left side gets their power in the White House and they take control of the Senate, which has now come down to 2 races in Georgia, amazingly, both Senate races in Georgia, if those go the way of the Democrats, so the Democrats have the Biden in the White House, the majority in the Senate, and a much reduced majority, but still a majority in the House, every single radical Marxist idea that the left has floated in the last 20 years will become law. The only way we can stand up against it, the only way patriots who still want America to be free will be able to fight back, is if cases get to the Supreme Court. And that assumes that you don't have the Democrats packing the court, which is something they have been promising and threatening all along. I'm getting to the point. At the one hand, We're in the precipice, literally speaking as we sit here today, on the precipice of becoming Venezuela or Cuba. On the other hand, when I finish telling you all of the various ways in which there most obviously was serious fraudulent activity engaged in by the Democrats across this country, especially in swing states, it will become obvious to you that if truth wins, if the Constitution wins, if the American voter actually gets to have their role in our democratic republic and vote for the officials who govern us, which include the president, then we're on a whole different path. Then you have the Republican majority in the Senate. Maybe you still have that. You most definitely have a very weakened Democrat majority in the House because so many Republicans won. In fact, that's one of the many things I want to talk about today. And we're going to talk about mathematical unlikelihood. But we literally are at a decision point right now. Whether or not America is going to surrender to the effort of the media to coronate Biden, to shush all of this clamor about vote fraud, to silence people in America, say, stop thinking about it, campaign season's over, Biden won, go home, everybody stop talking, everybody stop looking into things, just stop, telling the American people that the thing is over and you're foolish to still be arguing. This is what the media is trying to do. And so that is exactly what you should not do. The time is now for activists, conservative, Republican, Constitution-loving Americans to stand up and speak up to make sure that all of the apparent fraud that seems to have happened in many different ways in this election cycle is exposed, is litigated, and the consequence of that fraud actually comes to bear at the feet of the Democrat Party. That's what is needed. That's why this is such an important time. And I have told you all, if you listen to my show all the time, in 2016, I happen to support Ted Cruz when the primary was going along. I'm a Texan, he's our senator, I happen to know his family, I like them very much. Having said all that, I am so grateful that Donald Trump is our president. So grateful we have a fighter who is not going to concede. He is not going to concede to this avalanche that the mainstream media, which now includes Fox and MSNBC and CNN and all the left-wing CNN, all of them, Washington Post, New York Times, down the path of talking about what kind of China pattern Dr. Jill Biden should choose and who ought to be in the transition team and who Joe Biden might want to have in his cabinet. The discussion is intended. It's a psyops operation, a psychological operation intended to make the American people say, well, I guess it's over. I mean, all they're talking about now is, who's Biden's cabinet going to be? Understand, we're at a crucial decision point. We have major battles to fight, major battles to insist on a true and honest election. So back my point about McCain and Romney. If I thought that Trump lost the battle, lost the election fair and square, we'd be having a different conversation. We'd be talking about how do we protect ourselves from the radical Marxist ideas that Biden and Harris and the Democrat House, and we don't know about the Senate yet, but how do we defend ourselves against them? What are our arguments? What are our attacks? What's available? How can we fight this? That's what we'd be talking about. But we don't need to be there yet. We shouldn't be there yet. We're still talking about who won this election. I am not contesting the election because my guy didn't win. Because I think he did win. In fact, I think he won a landslide. We are contesting what is not just the Democrats' effort to claim victory, to coronate Biden, to have him marching down the steps, down the path to becoming president, but we're also fighting the psychological effort the media is using to try to make the American people get disheartened, to give up, to fold up their tents and go home. Now is time to be part of, if your state is engaged in anything involving a recount, volunteer to help. If there are rallies in your area, wherever you are, pro-Trump rallies, go to those rallies. Be part of the physical presence that says to America, we're watching, we insist on honest elections, and we're not going to shut up until we get them. Many of you watched election night. As you got later into the night, it looked like, wow, Trump's got this. And as you were hearing from that lawyer, Mr. Wood, a few minutes ago, you wake up in the morning and go, wow, what happened? What happened? And what happened was you had in several swing states the cease and desist, the stopping counting votes, And then the next day, a magical number of votes for Biden appears and makes it, well, who knew, Turned out Biden won after all, even though it looked like Trump won. This happened in state after state. These are not things that we have to just say, well, I guess that's the way it goes. Sometimes things go this way. Who knew? We don't know what happened. We have to insist on complete transparency, sunlight of truth into the entire process, and then we'll find out where that takes us. But in wrapping up the first 5 today, I'll say the reason I'm talking about this so much is not just because I want honest elections. I do. But I also think there are still literally millions of Americans who may have cast their vote for Biden because they think that, the media keeps telling us Trump's a bad guy. Maybe I could, maybe we can get over all the turmoil in our country. Maybe the riots will stop. Maybe the protests in the streets and the riots and the burning of buildings and shooting police officers. Maybe it'll all stop if we just get rid of Trump. There are those kind of Democrat voters, foolish, but not motivated by, my point in this, not motivated by the Democrat agenda, not motivated because they really, really hope on day one that if they get a Biden-Harris administration, that they'll show up in Washington and issue a mask mandate. In fact, this is what he's now saying. Biden, mask mandate, mandated track and tracing, mandated social distancing. He will turn this country into a Marxist country overnight, people. Overnight. You won't recognize your country, which gets to why I'm doing this now, and I get to the end of the show talking about what the Biden presidency will look like, because I do think millions of Americans who cast their vote for Biden did it they thought it would make peace, and they also did it because they had absolutely no idea what today's Democrat Party stands for. Their heads are still in the Democrat Party when their dad told them to vote Democrat because they are nicer to the unions or because Democrats stand for the little guy. Don't you know that? There are all sorts of reasons people vote Democrat, which has nothing to do with who and what the Democrat Party is today. And so, I'm going to wrap up the first 5 by saying this. We have a huge task ahead of us. I want to divide the show today in kind of summary this segment. Next segment, I'm going to tell you, just even touch on the buckets of the kinds of election fraud that is evident in front of us that we are waiting to uncover and expose and have litigation over and get to the Supreme Court over. But understanding the breadth, the scope, and frankly, my friends, how very, very, very long the Democrat Party has been working at orchestrating this corruption of America's 2020 elections. This did not get cooked up a week before the election. This did not get cooked up on election night. What you're watching, what you're going to hear about today are things that the Democrat Party's been working on and had in place for a long time before getting to election 2020. And they thought they'd get away with it. They thought they'd have America saying, well, who knew? I thought Trump would win, but turns out Biden won. And they did not anticipate, and they continue to not give enough credence to the idea that Trump is a fighter and that his supporters are fighters. The fighters need to stand up now. It's not enough to read about it in January, February next year and say, wow, turns out, geez, Democrats really did steal this election. Wish I knew. Now is the time to learn the facts, to understand, and then get in the fight to make this a fair election, because my overwhelming certainty is if we make it a fair election and actually only legal votes count, Trump won, hands down, and that, my friends, is today's first 5.